Hello, fellow attendees. Welcome to another Lunch and Learn. I'm going to be your host for today, Gregory Goldston, and let's go over the stuff, of course, the stuff being that stuff on the right. So we've got the Decision Support YouTube channel that we highly recommend checking out. You will see more content there, and you're going to hopefully find something that's quite useful for the use case that you're looking for. Below that, we have the Decision Solutions Marketplace, which is a collection of pre-built projects that you can either tear apart, implement, or just kind of analyze and look at within your decisions environment, understand how they work, maybe implement some principles for them, or sorry, from them. And the last thing we got up here is, of course, DocBot. DocBot is a fantastic tool that allows you to ask it questions. It gives you answers to those questions that are usually pretty accurate, as long as those questions are about decisions. And it can tell you how to build out flows, some documentation around certain steps, or just answer general questions about the platform. On the bottom there, as always, we a shout out to the additional stand up that we added, which is going to be between 2 to 3 p.m. on our business days, which is Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. And yeah, that is going to be the end of the announcements that I got. So if anyone wants to start throwing in questions, now would be the time while I switch over my screen to my decisions environment. Yeah, here we go. The unfortunate thing about that is that in order to do that, I actually have to bring up all of the list of attendees and questions again. So I'm going to pull that up now. Let's find that. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. So yeah, if people don't have any questions at the moment, I can go over something I've been working on, which is the Decisions Translation Service. So, Decisions has a service that allows you to translate particular strings into another language or into honestly any sort of setup because it's less of a translation tool and more of a match tool. I have a question about the integration setup and migrating between environments. This sounds like it could be very complicated, so I'm just going to unmute you and we can go for it from there. Let me find you in the list, and there you go. All right, you should be able to talk now.
I don't mind you going over your stuff real quick if you want.
Oh, you're good. No, no, we may have more time to fill later. Don't worry about it. We'll go over
All right.
questions. That's what we're here for.
So my question involves that we're running into right now involves integration with REST services
Okay.
and setting them up. We set them up, um, but those REST services, like when you set them up, and you add the service, you've got that service URL, right?
That's correct. You add the service URL here.
Right. So what that service URL that changes between environments. So typically your service is pointing to your client's test environment first, but
Mm,
then as you move up, like in our case, a lot of times they have a test, a QA, and a production environment. All three of those are different URL strings, depending on
mm.
what. But the service, the method itself, that part of the URL doesn't change. So it's the
Okay.
same. So my question is, how do you guys manage that going up the stack when you migrate things so that you're pointing to the right one? Do I have to create three different services and put logic in to point to the right one depending on what environment I'm in? How's that typically managed? I'm curious about that.
Sure thing. So I do want to specify that there isn't a one size fits all that people manage this by. There are multiple approaches to it. One of them
Yeah.
is the three service method, like you talked about, but another one does not involve that. And let me
Uh-huh.
pull it here. So dynamic, I'm going to call this a dynamic call. What a lot of people will do is they'll pass in the service URL and they'll change this part of it to
Uh-huh.
just be a variable that's passed in from the flow details. Because when you go into almost any flow in your environment, pardon me, let me make one real quick.
Yeah.
Grab URL. You have access in the Data Explorer to the base portal URL, which is going to
Yep.
change from environment to environment. So a
Yeah.
lot of people will have their services made here. Let me create one real quick.
Yeah.
Let's
And I do that with other things like database connection strings. I already do that because I
right.
can pass in a different connection string based. So this is, I think I see where you're going with this. I can just create it as a variable instead of the whole, right. And that
Correct.
variable will show up and I can pass it
Exactly.
in. Okay.
And
Gotcha.
then I'm gonna add a method. This is not gonna work because I don't actually have this set up yet, but I'm just gonna
Right.
hit OK on this. And now if you have access, well, you will have access to this method in your environment here
Hmm.
under integration, not database, REST services. There we go. Dynamic call. I grab this in. The website
Gotcha.
portion, what I call it, you just pass that in dynamically
Gotcha.
from the flow
Okay.
data.
Okay. I didn't even think about that, but that's the perfect way to do that. Yep. Because we've already got stuff that tells us what environment we're in because we use that for other cases
Hmm.
for things like that. So that's perfect. Now I just call that, I find out what environment I'm in, I pass it the correct. We even got a URL table that I can put
Oh,
that on
nice.
and grab it, grab the right one. That's perfect. That's exactly what I needed.
Cool. Yeah, glad to hear that.
Sweet. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Well, that's the only question we have currently. Still willing to answer more once we get them. Sorry, my cursor is kind of all over the place in this temporary setup here. Well, while we're waiting on that, I'll go back to the translation service. So, the way that translation works in decisions is interesting. And if I can be honest, it's not intuitive, but it's also not hard to work with. So, you have a master translation list, and this gets populated automatically by the system, as you see. A lot of this gets populated with strings that occur when you start creating particular designer entities, and it just starts adding those strings automatically to this list. What you want to do in order to set up translation is you create a language. So you add the language in here. Let's say I wanted to do something redundant, like call it English, which is EN is the HTML code for that, and I add that. So if I wanted to now add translation to my environment with this English language, what I would do is I would go into this. I would look for the string that I want to translate. Let's say it's name, which I'm just going to filter for that because that's going to be a lot quicker. Yeah, let's say that I wanted to translate the name over here. And I'm going to right click it and then hit set translation. So I can change this to anything I want. It doesn't have to match any sort of grammar rules. So if I want to say name instead, maybe it's going to ask for first name. So now in your platform, you will have the option to set that translation for users that have that particular language. So I'm logged in as admin right now, so I'm just going to do it here so you can actually see what's going on here. Right now, I've got my language set to Japanese, so if I set that to English instead, go over to my translation test, which is, where did you go? Near the bottom. Yeah, here we go. So if I run this translated form, and this form already has first name in it, right? So because it has first name, or sorry, it had name in it. Look at this. The label text is name. I've called it name, but it's translating to first name because it's saying my native account is English. And I have set this to translate the text from, I guess, what was already English to my specified language of English. So that goes for not just in the designer, but also when I run this as well. So end users with the specified language will see those strings translated for them. The way it gets those strings in that master flow list, outside of just automatically adding them, is any label that you check translate text for creates that string in that master list to be used later. So it's a very interesting feature, and you can set it on an account by account basis, which allows for a lot of flexibility in the translations that you set. Now, let's say that it doesn't get added automatically. You have a string in your environment that you want to translate, but you can't find it automatically in here. you are not able to add it to the particular language on their own. You have to actually add it to the master translation list first. So let's say that I didn't see what I was looking for in English, Japanese, Spanish, or anywhere else. So I'm going to add the string to translate. And let's say that I want to call this, what's something kind of out there in the portal? I'm just going to call it CSS. Let's say that CSS is not part of the list of strings already. Now I have access to translate CSS in the desired language in any of the languages I've created. And you can set those translations on a per language basis. So for Japanese, I don't know what CSS is in Japanese, so I'm just going to put something JA for the Japanese HTML. And now if I go to English and search CSS, you'll see that I can add a translated string for English now, which if I were to set that would just be en. Now, anywhere in the platform that allows for that translation that has CSS, you can now view that and use that. So let's see if it shows up in the designers. I'm curious. I may not have set this page to translate. That could be another thing as well, because this does come from the CSS viewer, which is a particular page that you can add data to. So I'll look into exactly where those boundaries are for what gets translated and what does not. But it has quite a bit of versatility, especially in user projects. So that's all I really had to talk about regarding translation right now. You'll see some content coming out on this shortly. And I'll go back to the lunch and learn and give it once over because we've been in here for a little bit and I have not seen any more questions yet. So I think we'll give it.
I can kill some time, Greg. Not kill
Yeah, sure
time, but
thing.
I got it, man. Give me just a
Yeah.
millisecond here.
Yeah, no rush.
Almost there.
Hmm.
Cool. Yeah, like I said, until we get a question, I can kind of fill you guys in on, oh, wrong screen here.
Here, I think I have to stop sharing mine.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my decisions to load up here. Sorry.
No rush. All good. Yeah, my Q&A stayed up this time. Not sure why,
All
but
right,
that
here we
was
go.
nice.
I am now ready.
Cool,
Cool.
cool.
Hello, everybody. This is Robert. This is the window I want to share. Cool. What am I want to talk about? Just some quick new release stuff. I've been spending a lot of time working on it, so I think there's some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline. 9.6 has been out for a couple weeks. 9.7 releases tomorrow. Um, so I have 9.7 on here, the version that comes out tomorrow. With 9.6, there was a plenty of new stuff related to like reports and how the cache works and all of that. In this world, in version 8, you're still going to have quite a bit, or sorry, version 9.7, you're going to have quite a few new features as well. The first thing you'll kind of notice if you're kind of interested in it is that we've uh, changed how the toolbox works. It's a lot more user-friendly and a lot more organized. My personal favorite feature in the toolbox is that your user-defined type step is only going to show you the user-defined types that you have. You don't have 12 folders for all the different structures that you may not have. It'll parse it down that way. That's the same for any way that you organize it. These user-defined types will only show you what you actually have, not the full kind of gambit of what was there before. The toolbox search function has been strengthened quite a bit. It's a lot more relevant stuff up top, and it's sorted by type. So when I type in CSV, it'll say data or database stuff, and I can organize and keep myself organized that way. You'll also potentially notice that on the top right, we've got health scores and we have validations placed right next to it. Those validations will go away if you cure them. So it kind of just gives you like a, a quick check. And again, all of this stuff updates in real time. So as I add steps and as I perform tasks, this health score will be hurt for various reasons. I just lost 1% there. Um, and the more steps that you add, the more you may hurt your flow for various reasons, right? And you can kind of keep track of what you are working on with a health score up here in version 9.7. So the again, the steps have been reorganized.
or the toolbox has been reorganized. And that toolbox extension also goes to this add after action. So right here, we still have those ported over. Project is also awesome. It just shows you stuff that you have available with projects, your specific project. So I have the Python module set up as a dependency because we added some new Python steps when I was making the video. But again, here under project, I'm not cluttered with a bunch of stuff. It only shows me those features and those elements, those dependencies that I have attached to that project here in 9.7. Um, some other kind of new and fresh stuff in this world, as you know, just to kind of follow up on what Gregory was saying. Horizontal timeline, we've added translation feature to that. We've added translation feature to case. Gregory, what do you call it? The case, not case timeline, but it's something like that. There's a specific word for it. The
Like boulder activity.
No, it's
The
called the maybe it's the case activity panel. I'll tell you here in a
That might
second.
be it.
Yeah, it is the actual wording for it is the case activity panel. Yep, so that was it. For each and group has got an enhancement where you can select dynamically which group you want to um, s- group by, which field you would like to group by for any list. So you can decide kind of at runtime, hey, I might want to group by department. It performs the actions that way. And I can get, averages of an entire department worth of requests. Or if I say, hey, actually, I want to do, um, requester name. And I know that a lot of this can actually be done a lot easier on reporting, fully aware of that. I was just kind of building it out, testing it, but just, different paths, and it will group based on those things. That is also new. 9.7. Some of our UI has changed for stuff like data type additions. We have case entities right here on the favorites folder now. Um, we talked about the Python step already. OAuth support for API access is new, so you can get OAuth support for or OAuth verification for APIs. Some new filters for reports. Um, Oh, here's a great one that might be helpful for a lot of people. And I see we have some questions in the Q&A, which I don't mind cutting myself off here. But the last thing I'll show, unless there's just comments on this, is that a really great feature, we're adding more and more functionality, case entities throughout 9. We've been adding it release by release. Case entities are getting stronger and better and better and stronger and stronger and better. Um, so a great new feature, creation of a case entity. You are no longer just given folder ID. You are also given an extension data kind of wrap up. So if you want to take all that data and jam it into a subflow, or if you want to utilize all that data as a packet, you're given it wrapped up as extension data, and you're given the folder information as outputs for a case entity, which again just extends the functionality of that case entity. Because previously you're just given a folder ID. You could use that to get this other data, but now we're giving it for you right here, right now. So let's see if the QA's got questions.
Yeah, we got two. The first one is the project roadmap webinar going to be coming back? For me being in this role for only 4 months, I don't have a clue what he's
No
talking
idea.
about, if I can be
Yeah.
honest. Uh,
Um,
we can unmute you if you would like to
yes.
add any more clarification.
No, I know that the product roadmap, we are actually I spent all morning talking with product folk and documentation team folk. We are totally revamping for next release 9.8 how all this goes down. I'm not sure if the webinar is going to come back, but I can ask around. Eric used to hold one weekly. Yeah, so we still do that, but it's internal. I know that we are it's not too much I can say online right now, but we are changing the way the releases happen, where they're going to be more curated towards um, that type of reception by you. It'll be more of a weekly kind of thing. Will there be a 9.7 release on YouTube going live? Yes, tomorrow. It will be. In the world I want to live in. I've actually already made it, which is why all this stuff exists. I got to make a small change based on feedback I got this morning, just about wording of something. Um, just semantics. Yes, but essentially I already have it on YouTube. It's just not live. But I'll go through and I do demo all of these features, all of the stuff that we've added. I went through and made the video already. So yeah, we'll have one for you. Why do you hide lots of methods from .NET Live? I have no idea. That's something for development team. I do know that generally speaking, that a lot of the internal methods and things along those lines, call internal decision service, although very, very useful and very functional, we they have hesitation about advertising them. And that's something I've been finding out too. But yeah, we have videos coming out for this. Speaking of .NET, I mean, I know it's not super correlated, but you do need .NET 9 to run 9.7, so you need that update for that, which is again .NET 9. It is a update that you would have to do. You can do it in the installer, um, but you would have to do it. The last thing I'll kind of talk about in this world, and again, feel free to interrupt me or ask, but we also added this documentation, kind of doc bot. Call it what you want. You can call it Dart. You can call it DocBot. You can call it AI chat agent. Um, and what it allows you to do is kind of interface with our doc bot here. So you can ask questions, and as you can see, I did this recently. Um, what step should I use to iterate through a list? Not perfect. Takes, a couple moments, 3 to 15 seconds. But it'll give you kind of information there. And one thing I learned this morning about this is that this is actually curated for whatever designer you are in. So if you are in the Flow Designer, it will curate your answers based on that. If you do it, here's your answer for each step, how it works. Love to see it. But again, if you are in the product area or the project hub, it'll be a slightly different curated response. Or if you're in a form and you ask those questions, but it's just a feature that we already have. And if you want access to this, obviously this version is not going to have context of what designer you're in. But if you just want a general help, it's docbotdecisions.com. And even here, um, it'll be closing in the near future. So yeah, we're including it in 9.7. It's just added starting tomorrow. So down here, what used to be product chat is now an extension of our kind of AI documentation kind of scraper. Um, cool. Any other questions you guys have? I'll gladly take anything, show off more stuff. I can talk about it. You do have a question about DocBot. Does it sometimes refer to old steps that have gone away? I know sometimes it'll give me a step that does not exist or has been renamed. Certainly, certainly. So the reason behind that, it shouldn't. We are kind of trying our best to curate it right now, but my guess is that the reason behind that is that on our documentation site, which is what it was trained on, which is what it kind of utilizes, it has access to like old versions. It has access to version 8. But what I will say is on this newest version of DocBot or even on this older version, if it lets you, like it'll ask you at the end, like, do you have any feedback? Please just give us feedback. Like we want it to be better. And the only way we can train this thing is by end users. We had an event not that long ago, like here it is right here. Leave a comment saying, hey, this is out of date or out of place, and we'll fix it. We had an event here internally where we went through and kind of rated DocBot responses, and we've been kind of curating it. But it's just one of those things that the more interaction it gets, the better it's going to be. So feel free to just leave that feedback on the forum. Please rate the chat, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down. It would be cool if it had an option to drop down to select the version you were on. Yeah, try it. I mean, kind of right here, but yeah, it's not. Oh, in DocBot, indeed. Indeed. And my guess is I'll actually talk with someone today and see if maybe that seems like it might be an easy implementation, especially if DocBot knows which designer you're in. It should also know which version you're in, if it knows that you're in a flow designer or if it knows you're in a form designer, it should also know what version you're in. Um, but again, it's one of those things that I know that we've had a number of people working behind the scenes to get this thing a little more live and a little more accurate that'll help out. And again, it's just one of those things that's kind of getting framed up over time. The last thing I'll show you guys, I guess, is just that this is from 9.6, but I thought it was really cool. On 9.6, we added this feature, but a lot of people don't know about it. Is now with 9.6 per user, based on their view of it, um, you can make changes and additions to the report as long as you have permissions that will only apply to you. So when I log in, I might want to see a particular piece of information and I want to update this report so that I can see this information, but not necessarily my coworkers have to see all these, and obviously you don't want to you can't add to the report, but you can add columns and say, hey, I want to add, a specific thing. And you can make changes to the actual report itself. You can also hide these columns, in 9.6 as well. But it's all going to be available as kind of drop downs over here. And I talked about that all on the YouTube channel Do you save data that someone inputs into the bot chat? I don't know. I would imagine yes. I would imagine. I know we're training it, so I would imagine we'll take any data we'll get. Data is the currency. Let's go with release notes here. Nope, release. So if you're interested in any of that, like just know that 9.6 was very robust. Like when I made this is a 15-minute video of me talking about new features. Again, all time stamped. But if you're down here and you say, I want to know what's going on with new 9.6 tile style stuff, that was really cool. The CSS kind of overhaul. You can have selected tile CSS. So when you click on a tile or perform an action, it highlights in a different color based on it being selected. That's really cool. Report column management at runtime. This is kind of what I was talking about a moment ago. You change the setting to can manage columns on a report, and then your end user is going to be able to click a pencil on the column header and make changes, and that will only apply to them. So that you don't have to have one person changing the report and uglying it up for everybody or prettying it up for everyone, depending on which side of that line you are living on. Secured constants was 9.6. But again, lots of report source, lots of charting features added, data designer UI, including, as you may have noticed in this, that this all has changed as well in 9.6, or it might have been 9.5 at this point. It's all kind of a blur, but your input and output mapping and the way that this kind of UI feels is different. This UI is different as well. But again, we've been pumping out stuff, and again, 9.7 comes out tomorrow, and then 9.8 will come out the first week of March. Yeah, anything you want to show off there, Greg?
Um, no, honestly, if we don't have any further questions, I think we're just gonna probably end it now. I think we covered the releases, we covered the translation, and the questions.
Yeah. Yeah, feel free. Like I said, if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, QA. Like we want to be helpful and all that. But if everyone's kind of happy and healthy, we can all just um, move on with the day and get to our lunches and get to your lunches and everybody's lunches. Okay, well, if you have any questions, like I got availability during the day, feel free to reach out to training@decisions.com or support@decisions.com. We can help you out today. So if you have questions and they didn't get answered or you have questions, just feel free to reach out. We have time today, and we have time almost every day when we can. But thank you guys, everybody, for joining. We will see you guys tomorrow for another bright and happy lunch and learn.
Adios, y'all.